Welcome back again. So we are entering into the next topic, that is the GFR, glomerular filtration rate. Now I will ask you, please go through the first topic, that is the functional anatomy topic first, because there we have discussed the structure of filtration barrier. So now we are going to discuss how the filtration occurs, what are the different pressure at the level of glomerulus. Fine. So again the schematic diagram. So this is your glomerular capillary, afferent and efferent arteriole, and Bowman's capsule here. Bowman's capsule is here. Okay. So what is the net force for filtration? So first we have to understand this concept, net force for filtration rate. So this filtration depends on a force which is known as the Stirling forces. What is that? So whenever some blood or water is flowing in this capillary region, it will have some hydrostatic pressure. Okay. So that is PC. I am denoting PC. So what is P? P stands for, this is the hydrostatic pressure. C for capillary and P for hydrostatic pressure. You know that hydrostatic pressure always try to push the water into the other compartment. So what this capillary hydrostatic pressure will do, it will try to push the water from capillary to the Bowman's capsule. Similarly, this Bowman's capsule will also have some water because continuous filtration is going on. So again it will have some water, and whenever there is water, it will also have hydrostatic pressure. So this is P, P for hydrostatic pressure, B stands for Bowman's capsule. So what the hydrostatic pressure of Bowman's capsule will do, it will try to push the fluid into the capillary again. Okay. So both forces acting opposite to each other. Now apart from hydrostatic force, there is another force which is known as pi. Pi is nothing but oncotic pressure or oncotic forces. Oncotic forces is nothing but it's a osmotic tension due to plasma proteins. Okay, so it's a basically osmotic forces, okay, which is due to plasma protein. So at the level of capillary, suppose this is pi C, oncotic pressure of capillary. Now you know that oncotic pressure has a tendency to drag water into the same compartment. That means it's a dragging force. Hydrostatic force, that's a pushing force, and oncotic force, it's a dragging force. It will try to drag water from the other compartment. So what this pi C will do, it will try to drag water from Bowman's capsule, right? Obviously there will be pi B also. It will try to drag water from the capillary. Now if I ask you, calculate what is the net force from the level of capillary towards the Bowman's capsule. You have to calculate what is the net force from capillary towards Bowman's capsule. I am calculating, so I am writing that. So PC minus PB, that is the net hydrostatic forces, plus pi B is helping and pi C is opposing. So this is the net oncotic forces. All of these forces, combination of all of these forces is known as the Stirling law or Stirling forces, right? Stirling law or Stirling forces. So Stirling law or Stirling forces is applicable in any part of the capillary in our body. Depending on these forces, it will be determined how much water will go to the tissues or how much water will enter into the capillary again. Stirling forces. Okay. If this forces is huge towards the tissue, then the tissue will have extra amount of water, which is nothing but the edema. You know, that is a concept at the level of capillary. At the level of Bowman's capsule, at the level of glomerulus, what is the value of all of these forces? PC, I am writing the normal value of all this. PC is 60 millimeter of mercury. PB is 18 millimeter of mercury, plus pi B. What is this pi B? Pi B, I told you, that is the oncotic forces. Oncotic forces is what? that is osmotic forces due to plasma protein. Now at the level of this Bowman's capsule, the plasma protein amount is negligible, almost zero, because plasma protein, even the albumin filtration is very minimum. Okay, I told you in the previous discussion 8 to 10 milligram per day. That means that is negligible. That's why for easiness we write down that oncotic force of Bowman's capsule is equal to almost 0 minus oncotic force of capillary is 32 millimeter of mercury. So if I take the net value of from all this, so this will be 10 millimeter of mercury. Am I clear? So first question MCQ that we have answered, that the net force for filtration at the level of glomerular capillary is 10 millimeter of mercury. Okay, 10 millimeter of mercury. Now I must have to say that this 10 millimeter of mercury which I have written here, this is the average forces at the level of capillary. That means if I ask you a question that filtration force is maximum at the level of this afferent arteriole or at the level of efferent arteriole. Just now I told that the average force for filtration is 10 millimeter of mercury, but I am asking maximum force is at which level? Average I understood, maximum force is at which level? Then you have to understand another concept. What is that? Suppose at the level of this afferent arteriole, the blood is flowing, and along with blood, suppose 100 molecule of proteins has reached here. 100 molecule of proteins has reached here. So it will have an oncotic tension. Now when this blood is flowing through this capillary from afferent to efferent end, what is happening? Some amount of water will be filtered and some amount of solute will be filtered. But what will happen? Protein is not going to filter. So what will happen to the concentration of protein in the other region? I can say the concentration of protein in the efferent end will be higher. Whenever the concentration of the protein is higher, which forces will increase? Pi c will be higher at the level of capillary. Am I clear? So because of the higher pi c, look at pi c is a dragging force, that means it will oppose the filtration of fluid. So what will happen? Because the pi c is higher, net filtration forces at the level of efferent arteriole will be lower than afferent arteriole end. That's why if you read carefully, you will read in books that maximum filtration force is at the level of afferent arteriole, and how much that is? 15 millimeter of mercury. And minimum filtration forces is at the level of efferent arteriole beginning, which is close to 0 millimeter of mercury. And what I have written here, that is the average forces throughout the glomerular capillary. Am I clear? So maximum forces 15 and minimum forces 0, means whenever the fluid is going from afferent towards the efferent end, the filtration become almost 0, and that should happen. Okay, now please note down that this 10 millimeter of mercury, this is the value which is given in Guyton. In Genang, it is written that filtration force at the level of afferent arteriole is 15 millimeter of mercury. So that's not about the average forces. Average forces is 10. And in Genang, the value of all this 60, 18 is given differently. Why differently? If you read carefully, you will understand the value which is given in Genang is from the rat experiment, not from human. Okay, so that's why I have taken other value from Guyton. Okay, so follow this will give you answer. This is already a MCQ which has been asked, right? So this is the net force of filtration. Now if I want to calculate the GFR, if I want to calculate the glomerular filtration, what I have to do? I have to multiply one constant multiplied by net force of filtration. net force for filtration, right? So what is this Kf? It's a constant. Now how to get the value of this constant? Normal GFR, all of us know that this is 125 ml per minute is equal to Kf multiplied by net force. How much that is? 10 millimeter of mercury. So this Kf has a value of 12.5 ml per minute per millimeter of mercury. Again Guyton. Okay, this has already been asked in MCQ. So this Kf is known as filtration coefficient. This is known as filtration coefficient. It's a constant. So obviously this filtration coefficient, which is a constant, depends on certain parameter. What are the parameter on which this filtration coefficient depends? Two things. Number one, surface area of all the glomerular capillary, right? So if the surface area of the capillary increases, to Kf will be more, but rather than increase, if it decreases, Kf will be low, and if the Kf is low, you can easily understand what will happen to your GFR. GFR will also be low, right? So capillary surface area, and second is capillary permeability. Capillary permeability, right? So that's why all of you know that if there is decrease in permeability of the capillary due to some disease in which there are some multiple deposition on the filtration barrier, then obviously the GFR will be lower down. Similarly, if there is decrease in surface area of the capillary, like for example FSGS, focal segmental glomerular sclerosis, obviously there will be decrease in GFR because Kf will be reduced. Am I clear? So this is GFR, how the GFR depends on different factor. Now I told you what is the value of normal GFR. Now before proceeding into regulation of GFR, you also write down the normal value of renal plasma flow. Why? Because in the beginning I told you the value of renal blood flow, that is how much? 20 to 25% of cardiac output, that is around 1200 ml. But renal plasma flow is more important for filtration, because in filtration the cellular molecule of the blood has no role, because we know RBC, WBC, they are not going to be filtered. So what is important for filtration? Plasma. So that's why you are more interested in renal plasma flow during discussion of GFR. So what is the normal value of this? This is generally 625 to 700 ml per minute, right? So this is the normal value of renal plasma flow. If I take a ratio of GFR upon renal plasma flow, this is known as filtration fraction. Important for MCQ. Filtration fraction. Okay, so if you just put the normal value of 125 upon 625 or 125 upon your 700 ml, what will you get? You will get a ratio of 0.16 to 0.2. So this is the normal value of filtration fraction. What this ratio indicate to you? This indicate that GFR is 16 to 20% of renal plasma flow. That at a time the amount of plasma which is coming at the level of glomerulus is 700. How much plasma is filtered at a time? That is only 20% of the total plasma flow. Okay, that is the meaning of filtration fraction, right? Now we are going to discuss the other part of this GFR. That is what? That is regulation of GFR. Regulation of GFR. Fine. Okay. So what are the things which regulate your GFR? Number one, important, auto regulation. And number two, afferent and efferent arterioles resistance. Okay, afferent and efferent arterial resistance. Now first we will discuss this autoregulation and then we will come here. So what do you mean by autoregulation? Autoregulation. So simple, if you analyze the word autoregulation, self-regulation you will say, but there was an MCQ, they asked autoregulation means constant blood pressure, constant blood velocity, constant blood flow. Okay, so please remember autoregulation means constant flow of blood. Okay, so I'm writing for your understanding purpose, this is constant blood flow. Important. Constant blood flow in an organ, irrespective of blood pressure within a particular range. Okay, so constant blood flow irrespective of blood pressure within a particular range. Okay, rather than this definition, we have to understand this thing what I told already. Okay, so to understand this, I am drawing one autoregulatory curve, graphical representation. So x-axis is the blood pressure and y-axis is the renal plasma flow. Okay, renal plasma flow or GFR, both are autoregulated. So look at the curve. Look at the curve. Okay, now I'm putting some number. What is this number? You have to remember this: 70 millimeter of mercury, and this is 180 millimeter of mercury. So suppose this is GFR, right? So what you are finding out here, or suppose this is renal plasma flow. What you are finding out here, if my blood pressure is changing from 70 millimeter of mercury to 180 millimeter of mercury, then my renal plasma flow is remaining constant. Although blood pressure is changing, but renal plasma flow is constant. This is nothing but autoregulation. Okay, but if your blood pressure is going below 70 millimeter of mercury, like for example, the person is suffering from shock, then obviously the renal plasma flow will decrease as well as your GFR will reduce. But within this particular range of 70